Hey, so now that we understand how we can swap two variables, let's try to use this in a real problem. The problem that we have in front of us is that you're given an array and you need to reverse the array. And what that means is if the initial array is 1, 2, 3, 4, it should become 4, 3, 2, 1 after the reversal. How do we go about doing this? So if you think of it, if you're given arrays, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what you have to do effectively is you have to swap the first and the last variable, swap the second and the second last variable, and you have to keep doing that till you reach the middle point, right? So if there are odd number of elements, you start from the first and the last one, swap these two, second and the second last one, swap these two, and keep doing that till you reach the middle minus 1th point. And if there are even number of such elements, you have to do it till the middle point. Let's try to code this and understand this better. So let's say your initial array A is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this has 4 elements, which is an even number. What do we have to do? We have to take this 1 and put it over here, and take this 4 and put it over here, take this 2 and put it over here, and take this 3 and put it over here. That will solve our problem. This array would become 4, 3, 2, 1. Now as you can see, this is an array, so most probably we'll need a for loop somewhere. So let's try to add a for loop which iterates from 0 to, and let's just define a variable by the name of n, which basically stores the length of this array. So we have to start from 0 and go till the half of the length of this array. We don't have to iterate through the full array because we only need to swap these ones. And if you take the full array and keep swapping this one and its corresponding half variable in the other half, if you do that for the whole array, you will end up doing it twice and you will be stuck with the same string that you started with, same array that you started with. So let's see what happens, what we have to do over here. So what's the first thing we need to do? We need to replace the 0th element with the last element. So let's write the start index is equal to I, and end index, can you guess what this would be? If you think a little, you'll realize that this is n minus 1 minus I, because if I is 0, it has to be n minus 1. If I is 1, it has to be n minus 2. Hence, it's n minus 1 minus I is the variable that you need to swap the ith index value with. Now all we have to do is swap the start index element with the end index element. And how do we do that? Like we discussed in the last one, we have to first add a temporary variable and store a of start index, let's say, in it, and then we'll assign the value of a of start index to a of end index, and finally a of end index equal to temp. This is how you swap variables, and that's what we're doing over here. Only we're not doing it just for two variables, we're doing it for half of the length of our array. If we try to see what the final output is, and how do you do that? We do that by printing all the elements in the array, and to do that you again have to have a for loop for I equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, console.log a of I. Let's see if we've written everything correct, and as you can see, the final output is 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's try to change the array to one which has an odd length, and as you can see, it still works, because if n is 5, n by 2 is 2. So if you don't know this already, C++ takes the floor of every element. So if you do a 5 by 2, what you will get, okay, this is not C++ though, this is JavaScript. So what JavaScript does is that it'll, when you do a n by 2, it will store the decimal value in it. So if length is 5, this value over here would be 2.5, and so it will swap everything for 0, for 1, and for 2. But over here, as you can see that at the index number 2, 3 is present, and if you see for that case, start index is 3, and start index is 2, and end index is also 2. So it got swapped with itself, and if something gets swapped with itself, it basically means that the value gets retained over there. So this algorithm works for an array irrespective of whether the length is odd or is even. Let's try out a bunch of other examples with random values, and as you can see, what is the final output? The final output is nothing but the reverse string. What is another weird way of doing this? So one thing that you haven't figured out already is that you could do is that for where I equal to n minus 1, I greater than equal to 0, I minus minus. So now what we're doing, let's say we don't have all of this code over here. What we could have actually done is we could have just printed the values in the reverse fashion. Even though that really doesn't solve the problem, we haven't really reversed the array, but you could always just print the array in the reverse fashion and you get the same answer. But that's not what we have to do. We have to understand algorithms from the basics. So what we have to actually do is we have to do this. However, there's another approach that you could have actually thought of, which is let's remove this code and let's say for I equal to n minus 1, I greater than equal to 0, I minus minus. Create a new temporary array, let's call it where b equal to an empty array, and then just push a of I to it. So what we're doing, we're pushing the elements from the first element, from the first array to the second array in the reverse fashion. Just like we printed them before, we're just pushing them to B. And now if we print the values inside the B array, you can see that it's the reverse of what is present in the A array. So when you're in an interview, most probably this should be your first approach. And then the interviewer will ask you that you don't have any extra space to use, in which case you will have to do it in place. What does in place mean? It means you have to use this array only, and whatever you have to do it right inside it. You cannot add new variables to the project. So in that case, use the approach that we started out with first. So as you can see, there are multiple ways to solve a particular problem, and there are good things and bad things of each and every approach. In the end, the idea is to make your interviewer happy if you're interviewing. And if you're giving an online competition, the idea is to get your question passed, in which case you have to make sure that your time complexity is as good as possible. And we'll get to what that is at a later point. Right now, I would just suggest that you try out this problem locally, and we'll start moving to a bunch of more complicated problems after this. So I hope to see you in the next one.